Hello and welcome to Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Corey Erdman alongside Morgan Campbell. Morgan, ring the bell. A monumental week in boxing, so to speak, coming up. We have a heavyweight title fight of some fashion on network television for the first time.
We didn't say it's the heavyweight title.
No, it is a heavyweight title fight, just as, well, even though Larry Holmes was the heavyweight champion at that point, he still was a heavyweight champion.
Right.
We have a heavyweight title fight between Deontay Wilder and Johann Duhaupas on NBC on the 26th in Alabama, Wilder's home state, so we should have a raucous crowd, so we have that. Last weekend we had some PBC action as well, but plenty to get to on today's episode. Guys coming out of retirement that probably shouldn't be coming out of retirement.
Stop.
Well, it
will not stop.
But it gives us great content,
I guess,
week through week. Jermaine Taylor is apparently going to be making a comeback. So is Antonio Margarito, which is maybe even less probable, but equally as dangerous.
Are they going to fight each other?
They could.
That's the only thing that makes sense, and then one of them just has to retire for good.
They're in and around the same weight class.
Exactly.
So we'll,
especially at that age, because guys at that level will just shuttle through weight classes looking for a payday. Let those guys fight each other, hopefully far away from television, and then let's just...
I can't imagine it's going to be anywhere near television, but True TV at the most. But we'll talk about that.
Maybe Go Fight Live. No disrespect to Go Fight Live, but maybe Go Fight Live, something like that. Or the
make me pay for it. Or I shouldn't be subjected to this.
Or the Ustream. Remember for like the Ontario Boxing Association? Yeah, it'd be like the one camera in the corner. And it just streams the whole thing.
Amazing.
Maybe they can fight there.
We can do that. That's where that belongs. We'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Phone here.
Yeah, why not? You can that's what selfie sticks are for, or for filming that caliber of fight. We'll talk about our boy Marvin Sansona a little bit later on, giving up on a world title opportunity against Gary Russell Jr. on Showtime next month. And we'll also we'll talk about Mayweather-Berto for the very last time because the epilogue All Access episode came out. And the epilogue was pretty good, and the subsequent interviews with Andre Berto and with Virgil Hunter were pretty good as well.
Both of these, I'm not going to say Virgil Hunter has lost his mind, although if he's talking about fist fighting with Keith Thurman, he might have lost his mind.
Right.
Andre Berto has lost his mind.
Andre Berto has definitely lost his mind. So we'll talk about his Breakfast Club interview in a little while, and we'll have to talk about our good pal Thomas Hauser and USADA. So plenty.
Thomas Hauser is the Jermaine Taylor.
He's also the
of sports writers.
Yes, he's also the gift that keeps on giving.
I guess
for this particular program. Anyway, so let's start with PBC coming up this weekend. Deontay Wilder taking on Johann Duhaupas, and I've been getting into some Twitter exchanges leading up to this, and they're very familiar because I've had them about Wilder in the past. I've had them about certain fighters in the past. And the tune of this particular discussion seems to be Deontay Wilder goes around saying that he's the heavyweight champion, so why isn't he fighting better fighters, or why isn't he fighting X? Name whatever fighter it is. Usually it's Alexander Povetkin is the name being brought up in this case. Now, you can make the argument that he shouldn't really have to do that yet because Deontay didn't have the longest amateur career. Doesn't really have that many professional rounds either because he was starching guys so quickly earlier in his career. Really, it's the Stavern fight that basically serves as his pedigree.
Yes.
Here's my argument, and it seems that when I make it, there's never really no one really knows what to say because I think people just want to be angry.
You're like the Floyd Mayweather of Twitter arguments.
Well, I guess so.
You just neutralize people with your savvy.
Well, here's the and
you're slippery, Corey.
I hope so. If you don't care about titles, if you think that Deontay Wilder's heavyweight title is worthless, if you think that it's just a paper title and the real champion is Vladimir Klitschko, then disregard that title.
Yes.
You can't pick and choose when you want to care about that title and when it doesn't matter. If we remove that heavyweight title from the picture, then Deontay Wilder is, as I just said, a guy with a very short amateur background, a guy who is still very much learning on the job, and a guy who can still fight a guy like Johann Duhaupas or still fight a guy like Eric Molina, and it's still all right. So you can't really, because Deontay's saying it, you can say, well, he's the one saying it, so he deserves the backlash. But you have to decide whether you care about this title or not. And if you don't, then I think the fight's okay.
Well, and the fact that Deontay Wilder is not the heavyweight champion, but a heavyweight champion, but still learning on the job is just it's reflective of the depth of talent in the heavyweight division. There still isn't a lot of it, as we've discussed before. The fact that Dominic Breazeale can progress as far as he's progressed, even though he's a former college football player who only took up boxing probably in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
You'd never see a welterweight champion like this. You wouldn't see a flyweight champion like this. So I'm still, with the exception of the Rigondeaus and Gamboas of the world, but those guys all had hundreds of amateur fights. This is the heavyweight division is the only place where this can happen. And because we're looking at the heavyweight division, you can't ever lose sight of that. And he's fighting, for the most part, the people that are available to him, the people that are made available to him. We'll talk a little bit later with BJ Flores about how all of the potential matchups aren't on the same side of this promotional divide that still runs through boxing. And to your point, Wilder, if he keeps winning, will be better a year from now than he is now, and he'll have fewer reasons to take fights like this. So there's still fights, that you take when you're still working on stuff, still learning stuff. So if we're still having this conversation 12 to 18 months from now, then maybe we can beef. But again, we're living in a world where you can have very few professional rounds and still have a heavyweight belt.
Yes.
Because, and the belts is split the championship is split how many different ways. It's not inconceivable that, someone with not a lot of experience but a lot of ability and potential can claim a belt but still be moving up the learning curve.
Well, and the counter argument, once again, is hey, if you're saying that you're the heavyweight champion, then you should behave like it. Or B, if you are going to say that you're the heavyweight champion, if you have this belt, you can legitimize these alphabet belts by fighting better fighters. The problem is that by design, having 4 heavyweight titles creates shallower pools everywhere.
Yes.
So it's not like does it have something to do with the fighter? Is it somewhat up to the fighter? Yes. But again, by design, they are not going to fight the best because you're looking at different top 15 rankings and different 15 choices of fighters depending on which title you have. And with the title that Wilder has, Duhaupas just happens to be sitting at number 12 in those rankings, right. So it makes him viable. If he were, if we just looked at like the ring top 10 rankings, maybe the way that we used to when we only had one heavyweight title, then perhaps fighting Johann Duhaupas is completely ridiculous. But that isn't what he has. That's not the title that he has. That's not the level that he's at. So let's not pretend that he is.
Yes, and it's not like Wilder, is going to say, when they say, hey, here's your chance to fight for the WBC heavyweight title, it's not like he's going to say, you know what, no, I don't want that title shot because I might be ready to beat the guy. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I know I can beat this guy, but I don't want the belt because I don't feel I'm the best heavyweight in the world. It's sitting there in front of him. And if Deontay Wilder didn't have this title, then somebody worse than Deontay Wilder would have the title right now.
And we'd be profiting off of it.
Right. And we wouldn't even be in a position to have this discussion. We'd be asking that guy, why doesn't he fight Deontay Wilder? And the other thing is, like, in this sport, it still is all about... it's a business. It's about money. It's about getting people to pay attention to you and getting those people who pay attention to you to make you rich or to make you less poor. And if it takes a belt, if the title belt is what you have as leverage to get you on a main event prime time on NBC, then that's what you do.
Which it does.
Yes.
Because Deontay Wilder wouldn't be the main event of an NBC card if he didn't have a heavyweight title.
Well, exactly.
And then Deontay Wilder doesn't get the payday that's associated with a primetime fight on NBC.
Exactly. And then, and there's different groups of people that complain. Like the people that are debating this with you are pretty serious boxing fans. But to the mainstream fans who are kind of in and out of boxing, they might watch this and say, well, this is boring. This wasn't worth my time. Hey, wait a minute. Here's this big green guy. He's supposed to be the heavyweight champion, but he's still pretty raw. Why did I watch this? But at the same time, all those people have a choice. The mainstream fans now also have a choice to watch people who are more exciting and wind up choosing not to watch those people, but then complaining when they see Wilder or whoever it is on TV. But Wilder is doing exactly what he's supposed to do. Exactly what he's supposed to do. You're supposed to take the title fight if you can win it when it's presented to you, and if that belt gives you entree to primetime network TV main events, again, is he supposed to? You know what? I think Klitschko deserves this. Povetkin deserves this.
Please, here you go.
Put them on.
Yeah.
I will sit on the sidelines in the name of principle or whatever, even though, my mortgage still needs to get paid. My car note still needs to get paid. Guys, it's his job. And I defy anyone on any of your jobs, if someone offered you legitimately the opportunity to make more money for doing something that's no more difficult than what you're doing right now, let's see how many of you guys. I know I would not turn down the money.
Sure.
I know what I do for a living right now. And if someone said to me, Morgan, do this exact same thing.
I'm going to give you a better job title.
Right.
And a better
job
salary.
title, bigger audience, more. You just keep doing the exact same thing, but you get more eyeballs and a bigger paycheck. Do I take it, or do I say, you know what? I don't feel I deserve it. Give it to Corey Erdman. I like you, Corey, but I would still take.
Yeah, as you should, and I would understand if you did that. We're going to hit the break. We're going to talk to BJ Flores on the other side of the break. And you know what? I don't think BJ is going to lie to you about this fight either. I mean, we're not saying this is the best fight ever. We're not saying that this is even going to be a competitive fight, though it could be.
And again, people forget that boxing is a sport. Like any other sport, you're not going to get, like the Blue Jays versus the Yankees are in town right now here in Toronto, first place versus second place. But you know what? Sometimes there's an interleague match, the interleague game, and
sometimes the Phillies are here.
Right. Sometimes you got to play the Phillies. Sometimes you got to play the Marlins. That's just the way it goes. And boxing is no different, because if everyone fought a true peer in every fight, you wouldn't have fighters go 15-0, 18-0, 20-0. Everyone would have 2 or 3 losses by the time they had 12 fights. If everyone had, it would be like amateur boxing.
Also, by the way, and we're going to hit the break in a second here, but everyone wants him to fight Alexander Povetkin. Povetkin has a fight scheduled November 4th.
Right.
So Povetkin's fighting someone else too.
Exactly.
We're all just trying to make money here, and we'll fight each other eventually. It's not like they've been dodging the discussion of one another by any means. So just let it happen. Watch it or don't watch it. We'll talk more about it on the other side of the break, though. BJ Flores is going to join us. We'll break down Wilder and Duhaupas. We'll talk about plenty more with him when we come back on Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Welcome back to Fight Network Boxing Weekly here on Sirius XM Channel 167. Morgan Campbell, Corey Erdman here in the Fight Network studios, and we are joined on the line by one of my colleagues, one of my good friends. He will be on the call on NBC this weekend for Deontay Wilder and Johan Duhaupas. BJ Flores joins us on the line. BJ, what's going on, man?
Hey, guys. Nothing. Everything's good. Just out here in Arizona hanging out and enjoying a little downtime.
You might have mentioned, you might have noticed, I said Johan Duhaupas. I had to actually check in with the NBC research department so that I knew how to pronounce his name. I don't know if you got that memo as well, but that might be news to you.
I didn't get it, but we went over it this morning before we had a big conference call with all the media this morning, and they prefaced all of us on how exactly to say it. So I just call him Johan in the meantime until I work out the kinks on the pronunciation for the last name.
Perfect, because I was just about to slaughter that last name. I was about to call him Duhaupas, and I would have been wrong. Duhaupas.
We want to sound cultured. I mean, French is our second language here in Canada, right? So we have to
distant second.
Yeah,
language.
Exactly. BJ, let's talk about Wilder and Duhaupas. Then, we were talking in the previous segment about some of the hatred that is thrown at Deontay Wilder, perhaps kind of unfounded, because people forget that even though he has a heavyweight title right now, this is a guy who had a fairly short amateur background, and he I think, in my opinion, deserves to take fights of this caliber at this point in his career. I still think that's fair.
I think it's an interesting way. You can go both sides on it. Like Dan Rafael this morning said, the Eric Molina fight, we kind of gave him all a pass, but now Johan Duhaupas, it's like, who is this guy? I mean, even hardcore fans don't know who he is, but it's one of those situations where it does take time to really learn how to be a good champion. And kind of what you alluded to, Corey, it's just a situation where, Deontay's kind of learning on the job. And fortunately or unfortunately, he already has the WBC title, so people expect and want to demand him to fight the best guys right off the bat. But if you look back at Vladimir Klitschko when he was 27 and 28 years old, he was getting knocked out by guys like Corey Sanders and knocked around a little bit. So it takes time to learn how to really fight, and especially in the heavyweight division. So I give him a pass, but as the champion, you definitely want to see the guy fight the other best guys out there.
Now, many of us haven't heard of or seen Duhaupas fight. We've seen Wilder fight. We've seen him knock out a string of people. We saw a really impressive win. The Molina win aside, we saw a really impressive win over Steve Aaron.
Yes.
We don't know about Duhaupas. Now, you've seen him on film, I'm guessing. Tell us what chance he has of becoming a Layman Brewster type party spoiler on Saturday.
I don't think he's got the type of power to make it, terribly dangerous for Deontay. But, here's the thing. If Deontay doesn't get his left hand going early and use that left jab and control that distance, I think he can have a very tough time with Duhaupas, because Duhaupas is 6'5", he's 240, and he's not one of those guys that stands around and poses and looks at you and stares at you. He's punching. He's very active. He's very he lets his hands go. He shoots combinations for a heavyweight. He's got a nice short right uppercut on the inside. And, Deontay's got the tendency to stand a little straight up when people get in too close to him. We saw that with Molina a little bit, and we saw that in some of the fights previous. But, Duhaupas, he's one of those guys. He's big. He looks good. He lost to Tepper over in Europe, who's a big up and coming prospect. But he also beat Manuel Char, and he beat a couple other decent middle of the road heavyweight guys. And he's actually not, even though the layman, the casual fan doesn't know who he is, he's not a bad test for Deontay. It's just unfortunate people don't recognize his name.
Let me ask
myself.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this about Deontay then, because there are some people who take issue with him calling himself the heavyweight champion of the world. I think that's semantics, because he does have a title. But regardless, how would you categorize Deontay Wilder at this point? Would you say he's the second best heavyweight in the world? Would you just say he's the best American heavyweight, the most athletic heavyweight?
Yep.
If someone asks you who is Deontay Wilder, is he all three of those things, or how would you describe him?
He's not all three of those things. He's definitely the best American heavyweight up to this date. He's proven that, and I would say he's one of the top guys in the world. And he's got, I think, the exciting and intriguing thing about Deontay is he's got such a huge upside and huge potential. If he's brought along at the right speed and the right way, I think he can go. He can rule the roost for a long time, a lot of years, if they just take their time with him. So I think that's what Al's being really careful about. He doesn't want to rush him into the teeth of the division right off the bat, but it's eventually coming, and it's Deontay is going to have those kind of fights in front of him, before he knows it. So, the Duhaupas is a good test for him. It's another chance for him to go out in front of his fans. I think the best chance you have to upset Deontay Wilder would have been the Eric Molina fight. First fight, he's the champion, let it all go to his head. He's fighting in his hometown, doesn't know how to deal with the nerves, all that kind of stuff. That could have been the best time to really unseat him. But I think now, after that Eric Molina experience, I think he's going to take this fight very serious, and I think Duhaupas is going to be in some trouble.
Right, so how close are we to seeing a Deontay Wilder who's the heavyweight champion in the more conventional sense, in that he's no longer learning on the job and fighting guys who are supposed to build him up, and he's the type of champion who takes on all comers regardless of how elite they are?
I don't know. With negotiations nowadays, it's so difficult to, I want Klitschko, I want Povetkin, I want those kind of guys. It is. People don't realize when you fight Vladimir, you adhere to a lot of the stuff that he wants on the contract. Gloves, hotels, meals, just all kinds of stuff. People don't realize all the little things that are in those Klitschko contracts when you fight him as a non-mandatory. So it's interesting, and I think between Al and K2, I think, not that there's egos, but I think both guys kind of are just fine doing things their way. You know what I mean? So maybe they get together, maybe they don't, but it's definitely something that it's a lot more complicated than, hey, I just want to fight Vladimir Klitschko next. There's a lot of things and a lot of logistics and numbers and geographical things that have to go into that. Where's the fight going to take place? Klitschko's got to deal with with his company for the TV, and Deontay's got the other deal, and Klitschko likes to fight in Germany and America sometimes. There's just so many things that got to be worked out, and it's just, kind of roughly to say, kind of a pain in the ass. So in the meantime, they're fine taking on the Molinas and the Duhaupas until Deontay really gets his feet set.
And in the meantime, we still can say that we have a heavyweight title bout on network TV, the first time in over 30 years. And you had a conference call earlier on today, BJ, and I want to ask you about the telecast itself, because as a broadcaster, you're working with, this is sort of a monumental moment. You're going to have Marv Albert back on the call the same way he was when Larry Holmes fought Carl the Truth Williams. You have Sugar Ray, yeah, that's how long it was ago. And then you have Sugar Ray Leonard. I don't know if Al Michaels is going to be on the call as well, but it's just a star-studded affair, and for you, as someone who takes his craft seriously, it must be fantastic to get to work with that level of talent.
Yeah, I was 6 years old whenever Larry Holmes fought Carl the Truth Williams, and I remember, like I said on the radio on our conference this morning, my dad was a huge Larry Holmes fan because he had that left hand. The Easton assassin from Easton, Pennsylvania, he had that tremendous left jab, and I say the best left jab in heavyweight history, better than Ali's, better than everybody. He was so deadly and so accurate and so precise with that left hand. He was very surgical. He used it to set up his other punches, and he was just my dad just loved watching him fight. And then after the fight with Carl the Truth Williams, the fights with Michael Spinks, and I remember walking into a hotel room. We were driving somewhere, and my dad getting a hotel room so we can watch the last part of that Michael Spinks and Larry Holmes fight because it was on TV. We got a hotel room. We were driving somewhere just so we could watch it. I think it was on HBO or something. But that's how big of a Larry Holmes fan he was. And, it's just all that history. You got Marv Albert calling that last fight. Fast forward 30 years, and, Marv Albert's still in the exact same place. And it's just, pulling a piece of history from 30 years ago and plugging it right back into this Saturday in Alabama. It's just really exciting.
Well, I mentioned Ray Leonard's going to be on the broadcast as well, and I had a chance to work with you guys a couple of weeks ago in Montreal. Some of the viewers and some of the listeners out there, they don't understand. But Ray puts a lot of work into this. Like Ray, when you get to the town and you're working with Ray, he's there for hours watching tape on these guys. I know a lot of people think that, hey, it's Ray Leonard. He just shows up with his name and collects the paycheck. Ray works really hard on these broadcasts. I was particularly impressed.
Yeah, Ray does his homework, and me and Ray communicate the whole, 2 to 3 weeks in between shows. Right when we're done with one, we're already turning the page and, getting focused on the plane ride home. From the last show, we're already looking at the next guys who are fighting on the next shows, just watching tape, getting familiar, seeing what they do well, seeing what their weaknesses are, and just trying to, get familiar with them and just see what they do to make them successful. So me and Ray communicate a lot in between fights. He'll call me, I'll call him, and we just keep that open line of communication because, he can help me and I can help him. And he's dedicated to what he's doing right now. And it's just great to see a legend like Ray Leonard, with such a great fighter and a Hall of Fame legend like him just really, dedicate himself so much to his craft and what he's doing now. But, it's not surprising because you can't get to where he's at and win the types of fights that he's won without that type of dedication and work ethic. So I'm not surprised, but it is refreshing.
Hey, and you're also going to get a chance to see C. Farhood again. You get to ask him, hey, why didn't you score my fight against Shumenov for me?
That's a hell of a question. I wish people could answer that for me because just looking back on it and rewatching the tape, I'm still a little confused. And I just, like I said, even with the entire broadcast, with Ray and with Steve and with Kenny Albert, everyone's kind of new. Each of the broadcasts was Steve's first time and Kenny Albert's first time. So, I'm not exactly sure what was going on, but people they're entitled to their own opinion and who they thought won the fight, but I still don't really understand it.
Well, what's going on moving forward? Because I know, you had hopes of maybe getting back in the ring in December, and your name has been tossed around as, maybe the title challenger for Krzysztof Glowacki in the near future. Is that possible for December, or is that the next move?
They've mentioned it to me, and if I could get a fight like that would be fantastic. I'm very open to that. But, someone I'd really like to fight is Tony Bellew. He keeps fighting these guys over in England, and we've had a bit of back and forth on Twitter. And, that's someone I'd really like to fight. I know he's got a date on December 12th, and I wanted to come back in December. And, I might be out in England or the UK on vacation at the time, and if I am out there on vacation, I'd be happy to go out there and give him a beating while I'm on vacation. So that'd be no problem at all.
All right. I do want to bring this up as well. I know this week you went back to your hometown as well, helping out with the Police Athletic League, trying to get a grant back in your hometown. Can you tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a Police Athletic League. They're doing a vote right now for all the different organizations throughout the country with the Police Athletic League, and they're in first place in Willard, Missouri right now. So I went out there to raise awareness. We put something on the news in the newspaper. I made a donation myself to the gym, and I just really want to support programs and anything that helps young men and kids to get themselves on the right page and in a situation where they can, really learn how to work hard and accomplish and chase their dreams. So anything like that, I support, especially when it has to do with my hometown. It's just something that's very important to me, and it always will be. Now,
Morgan, I didn't get a chance to tell you before we went on the air. BJ, when he was younger, was a fantastic middle distance runner as well. Okay. And had he not been a professional boxer, BJ, tell me if I'm wrong, you might have been an A-class runner.
We won the state championship my junior and senior year in the 4x800 meter relay.
4x800. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I ran the 4 and the 8. I was better in the 8. You know, my split and my junior year was 159 and my senior year was 158.
Okay.
But all of us, we were all really fast, and we just really helped with my boxing, because that middle distance, that middle sprint distance is something kind of like it's like a fight. 2 to 3 minutes. Of intense working,
yes.
And it just really helped, went hand in hand with my boxing. I won the National Golden Gloves that year in 1997, I did well in track, my whole high school career. So track is something that I love, but I also played football. I was an all-state wide receiver as well. I led the state of Missouri in Class 4A and 5A in catches, yards, and touchdowns in 1996, 1997.
Well, your ledger was full. So if you had to run half a mile today, how fast would it be?
I did it before my last fight, and I didn't really stretch and warm up and do it too crazy, but I still can run it probably pretty close to 220. I did it in 225, and I didn't really push too hard. But, I mean, that's still 225. That's a 5 minute below. That's a 450 mile if you do 2 of those. So I'm still moving pretty good for 215.
Well, you're the fastest cruiserweight in the world. There's no question. No question about that.
So.
Apparently, Amir Khan was a really good runner too, and he sort of had 2 paths that he could have gone with, like world champion boxer or great runner.
I could see that, because Amir Khan is not very heavy and has giant lungs. I could see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Amir made the right decision. I don't think he would have made that kind of money in track, guys.
No, probably not. Probably not.
It's fine. Don't feel bad for him.
Amir Khan versus Eliud Kipchoge? Come on, it wouldn't even be close.
No, it wouldn't be too much of a race. We should ask you as well. I know you've been fairly close with Andre Berto throughout your career, and you guys have spent a lot of time in the gym together. What were your impressions of his performance against Floyd Mayweather? Was it what you expected? Was it better? What were your takeaways?
I feel like he fought. He did the best he could. I felt like with the type of fight that Floyd was fighting, that Andre did as good as he could have done. I thought Floyd was probably going to try to walk him down a little more and be more aggressive, and I think that would have played into Andre's hands. But the way when Floyd wants to move and make you miss like that, it's just impossible. I think nobody can do it. Nobody can find him. Nobody can catch him. So, in those circumstances, it's tough for anybody to look good against him.
All right, BJ. Well, thank you so much for joining us, man. Enjoy your trip to Alabama. I know it's not quite as exciting as Montreal, but I'm sure you'll have a good time nonetheless.
Yeah, man. I'm going to make the most of it, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, guys.
All right, take care,
BJ.
All right, that was former world title challenger, cruiserweight contender BJ Flores. We'll be back after the break with more of Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Welcome back to Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Corey Erdman and Morgan Campbell here with you, broadcasting from the Fight Network studios and on SiriusXM Channel 167. Now, as we mentioned in the first segment, this is the last time we'll talk about Mayweather-Berto. But we have to do it because one of our pastimes is reviewing reality television pertaining to boxing, and Showtime released the epilogue episode of All Access Mayweather-Berto. So, the one staple that is present in virtually every final episode of any series or any reality series pertaining to boxing ever is the appreciation barbecue. Yes. And Floyd is basically the one who popularized this. So Floyd is the first guy that came out and had this barbecue that clearly he pays for and then says that people put it on for him.
Well, that's what I love. Hold on. Is that Floyd Mayweather hosts the Floyd Mayweather Appreciation Barbecue
and then banquet,
and then invites people to his house or to the park to come tell him how much they appreciate him.
But the thing
That's amazing.
The thing is, Andre Berto, who spent all this time trying to pretend that he's sort of the antithesis to Mayweather, saying, "I don't care about the money. He can have all this money." Or, of course, he does care about the money because he mentions the fact that he's making $4 million on the broadcast.
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit more about him thinking he made more than $4 million. We'll get to that in a minute. But he, like virtually every other fighter since the very first 24/7, also had to throw an appreciation barbecue
for himself.
We saw Chris Algieri do it. Remember in the single episode preview of Algieri Pacquiao? That was Chris Algieri goes for a run in split shorts and no shirt, comes back, and then there's an appreciation barbecue.
And that was probably the healthiest appreciation barbecue anywhere.
There was like a
grass-fed beef,
bushel of avocados,
right,
and like some nutritional yeast, and you could just sort of like make your own. Yeah,
yes.
You make your own avocado toast. But Berto shows up. He's just in the middle of his own sort of gathering, and it was like a house party. It turns into a house party.
Yeah.
But then Andre Berto shows up with no shirt in the middle of
That's
it for
what
no
I didn't
reason.
understand.
Which for our, we might have some new viewers and listeners out there.
Right.
We have to introduce them to the phenomenon of Trezvanting.
To the Trezvant.
Which is Andre Berto did to a T in this episode.
Trezvant. So if you guys don't know what a Trezvant is, if you're late 80s, early 90s R&B fans, the New Edition video, If It Isn't Love, there's the scene. It's about 2 minutes into the video where Ralph Trezvant is dancing. One scene, he's wearing a shirt, and the next scene, like instantly, he's just shirtless and sticking his head in this bucket of water and flinging the water away, like really dramatically. So Trezvant is a verb. It means to remove one's shirt during strenuous exercise, often performed in a dramatic manner. So Berto goes full Trezvant in the middle of his house party. Only Berto knows why. What's amazing to me, and I guess you have to be like this to be around the guys, just the depth to which the people around him had bought into that dream, because they're in his house now watching the All Access episode.
Yes,
and there's the part where Berto says, "Yeah, Mayweather can't read, Mayweather can't write," and his girlfriend is like, "Yes,
that's right.
Tell him."
His girlfriend, by the way, I wonder what she thinks of the live-in chef, who was basically positioned as. Not necessarily a love interest in episode 1, but as someone who was definitely close with and living with Andre Berto.
I guess
that's a dynamic that should have been pursued.
We all make our
executive
bargains.
Producer Floyd Mayweather. Let's give him a call and ask why that wasn't pursued. Yeah, definitely dropped the ball.
He dropped the ball.
Take that sports Emmy away.
But the other thing I was really impressed with was whoever translated this thing. There's a scene before the fight where Andre Berto and his dad are talking, not in French, but in Creole.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I don't speak Creole really. I kind of like Tarzan speaks it. I know how to, ask my girlfriend if she's going to cook, something like that.
Right.
But I know that when I hear the two of them, so they actually went and got like an actual, unless they went to Andre Berto's dad afterward and say, "Hey man, what'd you say? Translate this for us." But you know what? Give them their credit, because it wasn't French he was speaking, but they still found a translator. And because there's been times, if you watch HBO fights, I remember Stéphane Ouellette versus whatever the last Hilton was on HBO.
Yeah.
And they had the translator who spoke French.
Yes.
And in Ouellette's corner, they were speaking Quebecois French.
Way different.
Yes. So
that was on ESPN. Yeah. So they didn't hire.
Yeah. He starts translating and then he just stops, because he can't understand what the hell they're saying. These dialects are very different. So kudos to Showtime All Access.
That very same thing happened before we get to All Access. That same thing happened when I was doing the Delvin Rodriguez Erislandy Lara fight for Spike.
Yes.
So we had a translator there who was supposed to translate in Delvin's corner, who had a Cuban coach with him, the Cuban national coach. Didn't understand a word that was said throughout the entire fight.
Yeah,
we basically just turned the mic off and said, "You can go back, collect your paycheck. It's fine."
Again, because it's like if you grew up speaking some second language, learn English, but then had to go to Scotland and listen to them talk, you're not going to understand people. So it's the same thing.
You could certainly understand the frustration from Virgil Hunter, though, which was really the star of the program.
Yes,
Virgil just losing his mind throughout the fight, and you didn't actually hear much of that during the fight because they didn't cut to Berto's corner very often during the fight. I don't know for what reason. Maybe they wanted the focus to be mostly on Floyd throughout the time. Maybe they didn't want to convey how frustrated Berto's corner was to show how wide this fight actually was.
Well, they cut to the part where he said, "This fight is close."
Oh, right,
and the fight absolutely was
not close. But then there were other times when Virgil's yelling at him, saying he's embarrassing you.
Yes.
Why are you letting him stand there and talk to you? Don't come back to this corner. He pulled the Teddy Atlas. Straight out of the Teddy Atlas and Michael Moore handbook. And usually you see Virgil very composed and like whispering to his fighter.
Yes.
He's sort of this gentle,
like before the fight,
corner. Yeah, and even during the fight, he's usually very soft spoken and poetic in the corner. This is the first time that I've seen Virgil get angry.
Yeah, you don't see him get angry because he's always encouraging.
Yes,
and if he raises his voice, it's still in a positive way. You can do this, and he's always you can do this, son.
Right? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But I was also impressed with the depth of Virgil's commitment, because even after the fight, when Virgil's sitting around with Andre Berto's dad, and he says, well, if he was as aggressive as Maidana had been, he would have knocked Floyd out. Knowing that's not the truth, right?
Because Maidana was as aggressive as Maidana was, and Maidana didn't knock Floyd out.
Right. But that's commitment, and I respect Virgil Hunter's commitment, and he was committed to Berto up until the moment he wasn't, because we were listening to the ESPN podcast.
Right, yeah. Our Brian Campbell and his podcast over at Grantland.
Yes, where they talked to Virgil. And Andre Berto, within the first 20 seconds of this conversation with Virgil Hunter, Andre Berto goes directly under the bus.
Virgil said something to the effect of, coming into the fight, I was hoping that he would use maybe 50% of what I taught him. He didn't use 20%. I forget what he said, but he didn't even use that. Like, he really threw Andre under the bus.
Well, and again, and Virgil Hunter, his whole his identity, his brand is built around being, the boxer whisperer. And you come to him, and he puts you back together, and he rebuilds your career. And I mean, to believe that wholeheartedly, you kind of have to forget Angulo. You have to forget. Has Amir Khan lost with?
No, he hasn't lost with Virgil.
Did you have to forget how mightily Amir Khan struggled against Chris Algieri?
Well, you also have to remember that Virgil, keep in mind who Virgil is known for. He's known for Andre Ward.
Yes.
So Virgil has this guy who is arguably the best fighter in the world.
Yes.
Took him from when he was a kid, and clearly just had all the special talent you could ever ask for. Taught him everything he ever wanted to mold this kid into. He did everything perfectly, still does everything perfectly.
Yes.
So he's kind of used to that in a way. And then you get a guy like Andre Berto who does everything wrong, but has some physical gifts.
Yes.
And you can see why it's frustrating for Virgil sometimes.
Well, right. And, when Andre Berto, first of all, Andre Berto, I've never seen anyone get this much publicity off of a loss. And again, say what you will about Floyd Mayweather, but when he beats you, you become famous. Mm-hmm. Like Victor Ortiz, remember he had the face lube commercial?
He's in the Expendables.
He wound up in the Expendables. Yeah. Not because he beat Floyd Mayweather, because he got knocked out. Mm-hmm. Because he made a kind of an ass of himself and got knocked out. He becomes famous. Now, Berto is just making the rounds. Like, if you didn't know who won the fight, you would think Berto won the fight, judging by the number of media engagements he's doing. And he winds up on the Breakfast Club and again complaining about how Floyd Mayweather ran, how Floyd Mayweather wasn't there to fight. But again, if you watch the 12th round of that fight, one guy's doing all the punching, one guy's doing all the lunging and hugging. And Andre Berto is probably lucky he didn't get what he seemed to be asking for. He seemed to be asking for Floyd Mayweather to stand there and just unload on him. And if that had happened, it would have been a much shorter evening for Andre Berto. So he's lucky he didn't get what he asked for, because again, when it got down to people landing clean punches, Andre Berto was the one feeling the brunt of it.
Well, and my one point on the Breakfast Club interview as we hit the break here, when Charlemagne is the reasonable one and the one making reasonable points in the room, you know that you might have lost your way just a little bit. We'll talk about some guys who might have lost their way who are coming back to boxing.
I'm trying not to talk about
we have to. And we have to talk about our boy Marvin Sansona, because I'm sure we have some Sansona stories from the glory days at Casino Rama.
Exactly.
We'll talk about that when we come back here on Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Welcome back to Fight Network Boxing Weekly. Corey Erdman and Morgan Campbell here with you for the final segment of the program. And the boxing calendar is starting to fill out for the rest of the year. We just saw some rumors about Ruslan Provodnikov, Peter Petrov possibly coming to Showtime. And a couple weeks before that, Gary Russell Jr. will be defending his featherweight title, one of the featherweight titles, just to keep it consistent throughout the program, on October 24th. Now, Gary doesn't have an opponent yet. However, basically, he was supposed to be fighting Marvin Sansona,
right.
Morgan, who we're quite familiar with from his stint up in Canada.
Right, I have to look him up on BoxRec to see what he's been doing lately.
He hasn't been in training camp. And his handlers, according to our pals at AsianBoxing.info, which is as reliable a source for news out of Thailand, Japan, anywhere in Asia in general as it gets, basically have come out and said that his trainers started training camp, set up training camp. Sansona did not show up for said training camp and has basically thrown this title opportunity away. Sansona's camp is now called in and say, hey, we can't fight Gary Russell Jr. So we made the connection as we were talking throughout this week, because you just started reading a book on, here we go. A book on black prize fighters from
Black Genesis.
That's right. Here we go. So, Kevin R. Smith.
Yeah, the history of the black prize fighter from 1760 to 1870. Which camera are we playing here?
Yeah, we can play them all. Yeah, there we go. That's the one.
Okay, and this is prize fighting as distinct from boxing because it's before boxing.
No gloves, big pants.
No gloves.
High-waisted pants.
Yes, if you can throw people.
Sure, yeah.
You can
hundreds of rounds.
You can get people in a headlock and do the Nolan Ryan.
Right. Yeah,
in a headlock and punch them in the face. And then if you take a knee, the round is done. If you get knocked down, the round. So the rounds are often shorter than the rest periods between them.
Which, by the way, people always say, oh, why do they fight for 200 rounds? Well, because anytime we go down, we just get a new round. Right. It's okay.
Yeah, because some of these fights are like they fought 19 rounds over 20 minutes.
Right.
Like this.
Yeah.
And probably the second great black prize fighter was a guy named Tom Molyneux, who had come over from... it was very shady circumstances, very mysterious circumstances about how he liberated himself from slavery. Fights in like these battle royals in the U.S. and then just jumps this ship to England with no money and just shows up in England and says, hey, I want to fight the champion. He just beats people up on the street and finds a trainer named Bill Richmond, who's the other African-American in London. But Tom Molyneux's thing is he had no clue. He was like this fighting savant, but had no clue how to live outside of the ring. So every time you go win some money, where's Tom Molyneux? We don't know. He's out with women. He's out drinking. He's out spending all his money, riding around saying he's going to beat the champion. You know, when it comes time to fight, you have to go wake him out of his stupor to go fight, to go train. And he never wanted to train. And
slept with everybody, by the way. Yes. Apparently everyone from aristocrats to prostitutes.
Right.
He didn't care.
Right. So now we don't know if Sansona is sleeping with aristocrats and prostitutes. But we do know is that repeatedly, like we've heard this story. So when did we first come in contact with Marvin Sansona? It's 2009.
Yes.
And for the last 6 years, since he was a teenage phenom, we've been hearing this story repeatedly. Sansona could be great, but we can't find Sansona. Sansona has a fight lined up, a title fight, but we don't know where he is. Strange thing about Sansona, he hasn't lost since 2010.
Arguably had the knockout of the year, like a year ago.
Yes. And he has a win this year.
Yes.
He has a win this year.
And he's still missing.
In 2015. But there is something, I don't know what it is with him, that it's a mental block, clearly. Maybe he's one of these people you hear about him that are kind of scared to succeed. But, you know, we've heard this story about him so many times. I'm starting to wonder, well, it's not that I'm starting to wonder. I'm almost convinced that he's never, all this potential that he had when we first encountered him 6 years ago, I don't know that he will ever realize or even come close to realizing it.
Well, I just know, when we saw him in Casino Rama in Orillia, Ontario here,
yes.
like even after his fights there, he went off the rails. Like,
yes.
Because legal drinking age here is 19.
Yes.
He's a fighter who was probably like 18 at that time. People just let it go, and he let it go as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess it makes sense. My favorite Tom Molyneux story, by the way, before we get too far off of that, is before his rematch with Tom Cribb for the British heavyweight title. Yes. Now, the first fight is very controversial. I'm sure it was a real robbery from all the accounts. But before the rematch,
because Tom Cribb couldn't come to scratch.
Exactly. Yes.
At the beginning of the 30th round.
That's right. Yeah.
But then his fans rushed the ring, and
then it was over.
But then they let him recover, and they said, "Okay, we're fighting again."
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Molyneux was over there celebrating.
So Molyneux just couldn't hack it after that fight. Went off on all of his escapades, and then the day of the rematch with Tom Cribb, legend has it that he downed a boiled foal, a whole apple pie,
yes,
and a tankard of beer, and then went into the ring for the rematch and lost in 19 minutes.
He was hungry and he was thirsty. And according to the records of that fight, like, he landed a few punches, but then he just got tired naturally, as you would too if you had a tankard of beer and
a whole apple pie.
And a whole apple pie. He was hungry.
That's a lot of people listening to this are like, yeah, that's Saturday night. I don't think I could get out there and have a prize fight. We touched on the fact that Jermaine Taylor is out of jail. He's attempting a comeback, but even crazier than that, Antonio Margarito has met with Top Rank and about a comeback, and Bob Arum is basically okay with this. Provided that Margarito can have his eye looked at and he's fine. He said he looks like he's in good shape. We'll definitely hear him out.
Lots of people look like they're in good shape. That doesn't mean they should be fighting for a living. And now the reality
is, he placed top 50 at the Paris half marathon, by the way. Antonio Margarito, very good runner.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he could maybe race BJ Flores.
Yes. Yeah. We can
winner goes against Marlon Esparza.
Yeah.
But and the reality is, if Bob Arum doesn't sign Antonio Margarito, someone will, because he has a name.
He'll just promote himself.
He will promote himself. Like, there will always be a place for him to fight, but at the same time, it's up to each individual promoter to say, well, do I want to be the person who pushes this person towards a debilitating injury? But I don't know how many boxing promoters have that deep of a
conscience.
That deep of a conscience,
right?
Exactly. Especially because Margarito has a name, and it gets to the point too where if you have a name, it doesn't even matter how many times you've lost or how badly you've been beaten. You can always. It wouldn't surprise me to see him wind up on HBO, because you build him up, right? And how do you sell him now? He's the guy that Floyd Mayweather was always afraid to fight. This guy
is the most avoided fighter in the welterweight division.
Avoided fighter ever, and then that's how you sell him. And then some young contender injures him, beats the mess out of him, and you say, "Oh yeah, well, what a fine prospect you are." You just beat the man that Floyd Mayweather ran from, and because at this point, that's what there is left to sell about Margarito. But again, people's memories are short, and especially the mainstream. You sell Margarito to them that way, and they'll buy it, and then they will buy whoever beats Margarito, because Margarito. Listen, anyone who signs Margarito is not signing him so he can win fights.
No, I will say, and as we're wrapping up here, that there are some people who are reporting on this story and it seems that the boxing media has basically taken sides. You either love PBC and like you're cool with it,
right?
Or at least you're cool with it, or you hate it entirely and you never acknowledge its existence or whatever. But you love Top Rank and you think that Oscar is suddenly a good guy now. They're not saying anything about the fact that Bob Arum is about to let a guy who might be blind get back in the ring, but they're cool with criticizing Vivian Harris fighting or whatever. Listen, this stuff happens on both sides.
Well,
this happens all across boxing.
That's the thing.
It is not limited to Al Heyman. It is not limited to anybody.
Well, I find so much of boxing media, and you don't find the people who cover any other sport divided in this way. Like, you don't see baseball writers saying, I'm a National League guy, the designated hitter. That's not real baseball. And then just ignoring everything that happens in the American League, or accusing everything the American League does of being corrupt. Well, of course you cheated.
DH? Yeah.
Right. But in boxing, everyone has their camps. There's the people that think that the Heyman side are cool, and there's the Top Rank HBO cheerleaders. Even though it's all the same
for
sport.
No reason, and we're wrapping up in just a second here, but it doesn't make sense that it's
all the same sport.
It's all the same sport, but here's some of the people that are that fervent on either side have no reason to be that fervent. There are people who work at the ring who get Golden Boy checks,
yes,
who are more reasonable than they are. Right. I'm on the Heyman payroll,
right,
and I'm more reasonable than some of these people.
Right.
And you don't have a dog in the fight. You need to let it go.
Right.
Let it go. All right, we're all out of time though. Before we hit the commercial and run overboard here, we better ring the bell. There we go. That does it for this edition of Fight Network Boxing Weekly. For Morgan Campbell, I'm Corey Urban. We'll see you guys next week.